So to kickstart things, we've got Voula Kougelos, who'll be presenting to us about Adolescent Psyche. Voula is the manager of the South West Sydney LHD Youth Health Services, the specialist multidisciplinary primary healthcare services for marginalised and at-risk young people aged 12 to 24 years in South West Sydney. After graduating from the University of Sydney, Voula worked as a psychologist in regional New South Wales, providing clinical services to adolescents and their families, consultation to youth-related service providers, and supporting many regional community development projects. Voula has worked in the field of adolescent and youth health for 30 years in both regional and metropolitan services, and has a strong interest in the development of integrated, creative, developmentally appropriate and accessible health services for marginalised and vulnerable young people and their families and carers. She has served as a member of the Executive Board and then later, from 2008 to 2010, as President of the New South Wales Association of Adolescent Health Inc., the state peak body for adolescent health. Please welcome Voula.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? I'm a little bit soft-spoken, thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for this invitation to talk with you today. We were so excited to be invited to this event. Any opportunity for us to share any information, ideas, experiences we have that might be useful to you in how to work effectively with young people, we welcome. But certainly the other thing that we were very, very excited about was the opportunity to meet you and to explore opportunities to link more closely with our GPs across the southwestern Sydney area. So both I and Amanda, our clinical nurse specialist, will be hanging about through the afternoon tea break. So if anyone has any questions or they just want to kind of give me any contact information or whatever, we're more than welcome to help in any way we can. Plus I have some flyers which actually has all our contact details and a snapshot of what youth health services do in southwestern Sydney for you to take away with you, and you can contact us by email or phone at any point in time. Wonderful. So welcome to the topic. I was given this topic title, Adolescent Psyche and Pregnancy, and I thought, oh, how exciting is that? I'll do my best and share what my experiences and what I understand in this field. As Susanna explained, I manage the youth health services for the Southwestern Sydney Local Health District, and youth health sits in the directorate called the Child, Youth and Family Directorate in Primary and Community Health. And today I also have one of our key staff members in youth health, our clinical nurse specialist, Amanda Haslam. And Amanda will tell you, share with you a little bit more about the role of the nurse and the ways in which we work with young people, especially pregnant and parenting young teenagers, and the way in which we would love to work in partnership with you as well and support you in any way we can. Firstly, we would like to acknowledge the Darug people, the traditional owners, past, present and future. Thank you. So our objectives today, briefly, is to hopefully for you to walk away understanding what the barriers pregnant young women and parenting young people face in engaging with services, mainstream antenatal and support. Develop some skills and knowledge around how to identify, engage, assess and respond to the health needs of young people. And develop, start the process perhaps of us developing a youth-friendly referral pathway and a collaborative care model so that we can support together physical and psychological health needs of at-risk young people. So I'm hoping that, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that I have no doubt that in this room we have a wealth of knowledge and experience, and some of the ideas that I'll be sharing with you today are possibly not new, and probably not new, but I'm hoping that they'll serve as a refresher and be useful in that way. And for others that perhaps this is a kind of a new field, working a little bit more closely with young people, working to address pregnant and parenting young people's needs, health needs, you'll hopefully walk away having something useful out of this. So I'm also hoping that we can talk a little bit about how you create accessible youth-friendly services within your general practice. How you might respond to diversity. Young people are not a homogenous group. We're not a homogenous group. Young people certainly aren't. And what you might keep in mind that might help you in that way to support them. We'll talk a little bit about the really important key issues around confidentiality and consent, and how you start those conversations with young people in a way that makes sense to them and helps you, start from a good basis. We'll talk a little bit about what we know about communication and engagement skills, and the skills particularly that have been effective with young people. We'll talk a little bit about the HEADS psychosocial risk assessment, a really fantastic holistic health assessment tool that many of you may know about, many of you may use. I might get a show of hands. Does anyone here know about the HEADS assessment tool and or use it in their work sometimes? Okay, fantastic. So we'll, for a number of people in the room, it'll be a new tool, but we'll also be providing you links to the tool and links to some really fantastic resources that have been designed with general practitioners in mind by the Ministry of Health and other key bodies in the state. And we'll talk a little bit about how to navigate local services and how to be linked in with the with other referral networks that you might not be aware of. These are some links that will be sent out to you with this PowerPoint presentation that will link you directly to some really important key state health documents. The first one is replacing the previous youth health policy by the Ministry of Health, and it really gives it's the framework, I guess, for what we need to consider as being priorities in the way in which we work with young people. So it's a really excellent resource. The Youth Health Resource Kit, fantastic. It's it essentially takes you from start to finish about how you understand young people's health needs, how you may address different specific health issues as well. The competency framework gives you a bit of an idea about the kind of skills, what kind of skills can you focus on to develop in your work or the work that, for example, people like we do. We look to this to help develop our staff. And lastly, the youth-friendly checklist for health services. Again, this was developed as part of the toolkit for GPs by the Ministry of Health as well. So very quickly, we're the youth health services for the LHD. Now, we sit in we're a primary health service, but we are specialised. So we work with target populations of young people. So we're not a generalist adolescent health service, although we can support and assist you in that way with general health inquiries. We particularly work with young people at risk of poor health outcomes, so marginalised and at-risk populations of young people. And parenting and pregnant young people certainly can fit into that category. So we work with young people that that might come across your practice at some point and that you may find you may struggle with. They're a little bit more challenging. There's a lot more complexity in their issues. They might have a bit of a trauma history as well. And please call us at any point in time should you wish to even just discuss any of those cases, and we will certainly identify together with you ways that we can support you or other avenues we can facilitate links to. So we're one youth health service, but we have 3 sites of service delivery. You may not have heard of these centres, but one of our centres is called Flight, the Fairfield Liverpool Youth Health Team. Their team base is in Carramar, but they cover the Fairfield and Liverpool local government areas for us. We have the Corner Youth Health Service, which is based in Bankstown. And we have Trackside, the youth health service for the Macarthur, Wallandilly and Wingecarribee areas. Now, having said, we've got 3 centres and we provide a number of our services through a centre-based approach. But young people often may not make their way into a centre, may have so much going on, may be living quite chaotic, difficult lives, that coming into a centre is really, really hard for them. So we also have a very strong outreach delivery approach. We see young people in schools, we see young people in youth centres, we see them in youth accommodation services. We may do our sessions by walking around a park with them. We may see them together with you in your GP practice if that's where they're comfortable and they can find it most easily to get to. Basically, we try to break down as many barriers as we can to help them link in. So that takes you through the list of our target populations. Homeless young people, so young people, that includes young people who may be couch surfing, so they're not visibly homeless. No one really may know they're homeless, but they're not able to live at home. They may be, staying at one friend's house for a few weeks and then moving on to someone else they know. A really, potentially high-risk group of young people. Aboriginal young people, young carers. Again, this is kind of almost a little invisible group too. There are a significant number of young people that play a major caring role in their family, that keep things organised, that look after younger siblings, that may support mum or dad with a mental illness or a substance abuse issue, and it's a group that we work really hard to kind of access and support. Gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender young people, again another group that's been highly marginalised and stigmatised and often in danger. Okay, newly arrived refugee young people from high needs cultural and linguistically diverse communities, young people experiencing significant economic disadvantage. I mean, that's a lot of populations. And we work particularly with young people in out-of-home care or who may be connected to juvenile justice, who may even be linked as, given that we see them up to 24, they might be linked with probation and parole, which is now known as correction services, etc. And as you can see there. And that's just... And I guess we support young people around a whole range of health issues, as you can see there. So these are some of the services we provide. So we've got clinics, we've got nursing and medical clinics, we have counselling services, health education. The other thing we do is we do case management with our clients. So we work really hard to work with the young person and any other carers or other support agencies to coordinate around a whole range of needs that then we know can make a huge impact on their health and well-being. Access to safe housing, access to decent, food, ensuring they're getting the appropriate Centrelink payments and money's coming through, etc. We also provide a secondary service for NSP for young people too. So again, another avenue to engage in really high-risk young people and hopefully building a little bit of a trust with them so that they might be open to then engaging in some counselling support and then hopefully links to other drug and alcohol treatment services. So our counselling team includes psychologists and clinical psychologists and social workers, and we run a whole range of programs. Our health promotion officers, we have health promotion officers at all our sites, and we also have 2 Aboriginal health education officers, which is fantastic. We're running a whole lot of Aboriginal specific initiatives, and it's starting to make a difference in engaging Indigenous young people. And as I said, we have our nursing and medical staff. So we have our clinical nurse specialist, Amanda. We also have 2 registered nurses, and community paediatrics provide medical support to assist us with some of our clinics. Now, we touch on some of that. Young people still need GPs, and we need you. and young people, so whilst we can provide some of that service delivery, particularly to young people who are still very, very unsure about going to a general practice. It's often perhaps a starting point for them to experience accessing healthcare in a positive way. And then we hope that we can link them in effectively to your services as young adults or when the time's right. So I guess I'm hoping we can build our understanding and improve our responses collectively as partners to address the needs and improve engagement and resulting health outcomes for young people. Okay, so pregnant and parenting teenagers, often they're perceived as a vulnerable group of young people who can have, who are at risk of adverse health outcomes. Not always, but we know that, as a group, there are a range of risk issues and a lot of, elements of support that they need. And I guess a whole range of support services are needed to really help them and support them through that journey. Our challenge as health workers, and this is a challenge our service also faces, we cannot be complacent around this issue, is around the lack of engagement or challenges around engaging them effectively, and as a result having a high attrition rate. So they might be kind of, encouraged to come and see us or encouraged to go and see you and link in with you, and then they don't turn up to follow-up appointments, and so that's an ongoing challenge. So I don't know how well you can see this, but essentially this looks at births per 1,000 for 19-year-olds and under. And New South Wales, it's in 2008, the latest figures were 14 births per 1,000 were born to young women under the age of 20. And as you can see, some states, however, it's much higher than that. It's in the Northern Territory, it's 52 per 1,000, yeah. And, we have seen, however, over the last 50 years, a drop in the number of live births born to young people aged 19 or under. So what might be the issues relating and showing significant differences in various states and territories? Well, the thinking is that it's around degrees of urbanisation. That's probably reflecting how easily accessible services are, or the range of services, whether there's a range of affordable services in different areas. It's reflecting socioeconomic profiles and level of remoteness, particularly in some parts of the country, as you can see, Northern Territory, Western Australia, etc. At the moment, we only can estimate teenage conception rates, as we're still not collecting and publishing data in a uniform way across the state. But we do know that Australia has one of the highest termination rates for teenagers in the developed world, and that could reflect that we also have, safe, more accessible options that are available as well. Okay, the next table comes from the most recently developed health improvement plan that the Southwestern Sydney district has produced, and this is the health improvement for children, young people and families plan, and it's available on the Southwest Sydney district website. So it shows, I guess, where most of the births are for young mothers. And Campbelltown has the highest number of mothers aged 19 years and under. Don't know whether you can see that clearly. Maybe not. It will be in your in the presentation notes that you'll be receiving by email, though. So what we think we know is that the incidence of teenage pregnancy and parenting is strongly related to the quality of the life experience of girls throughout their childhood. So the experience that our young girls, our children are experiencing, it makes a big impact on on their identity. It shapes their expectations of the world. It shapes how they make decisions about relationships with others. It shapes sexual involvement, and it also impacts on their capacity to effectively negotiate things like the use of contraception as they are becoming sexually active. So, and it also impacts on the decisions they make when they find themselves unexpectedly pregnant. So early intervention, the way in which we support young girls is really, really important for us to be thinking about. And the impact that they have in terms of their family experiences, the level of support, the level of, risk issues they face in families, their experiences as girls and then young women in the community and in their schools is all critical. So the human story of pregnant young people and young parents. So what do we know about some factors that reflect a greater likelihood that a young woman who identifies herself as being pregnant then is likely to continue with an unintended pregnancy? Well, what we know are that there's usually a high rate of leaving school early. Many or most of them have had difficult family backgrounds, so and some, very unpleasant family experiences. This is not everyone, but these are critical factors that are coming through, and they've been in or are transitioning from state care. So, and particularly as they're transitioning out of state care and they're losing those connections and bonds and that kind of safety support network, seems to be a really critical time for us to be checking around. So the prospect of a baby often resonates with, and these aren't bad things. How important are these things for adult women to, in having a baby? Be a deep need for love, a sense of belonging, of mattering deeply to someone and giving a sense of purpose otherwise lacking. So I guess we need to not just look at the specific health issues and address those health needs and other practical needs with young, pregnant young teens. We also need to be considering the emotional component that is influencing their decision making and their well-being. So focusing some attention on the emotional component of the decision making goes hand in hand with looking at the quality of life experience for girls. So factors that have been identified that relate to high dropout rates to programs or not sort of following through with antenatal care, etc., or taking on home visiting initiatives, have been identified as low socioeconomic status, presence of multiple risk factors. Life is tough, very complex for not only that young person but the system, the family system that they're living in or the other relationships that they're living besides. Perceptions that the services were intrusive and threatening. Doesn't mean that the services were intrusive and threatening, but but if a young person perceives them as such, that's a real barrier. And these factors are similar also for older parents. So they're good things for us to be generally aware of, that we might need to just think about doing it, trying harder or working a little bit differently. So challenges regarding uptake of home visiting programs by young parents were identified as lack of relevance or meeting their needs. So, someone might be coming to their door and they might be struggling with having enough money for food and rent, and the last thing they want to kind of, or are able to kind of focus on, might be some of the kind of health things that a home visiting program might focus on. So Amanda will talk a little bit about how we try to always check that we're working with where the young person's at any particular point in time, what's kind of most pressing for them, alongside then working on longer term goals with them. They might be feeling too burdened to use our services. It's adult struggle with, we all struggle around the room with all the challenges we have in our lives and all the demands that are made on us. A young person's no different. And in fact, they're probably struggling with less skill and experience than we have. They might misinterpret the service. They might think, oh, well, it's about someone coming and checking on me, not necessarily, they're telling me that it's supposed to support me, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe they're checking, and because I'm a young parent, that automatically means that they're going to want to take my child away from me. And of course, lack of trust. So personal factors that impact uptake for young people are particularly stigma. That's possibly not a surprise for many of you, but that's, we still have a lot of stigma, right, in our society today regarding young people becoming pregnant or parenting. They may have personal issues around trust. They might have had some difficult experiences around confidentiality, and their one or two negative experiences by someone completely out of sight of this room may still weigh very heavily on them and influence the way in which they see you and respond to you. And then control issues. They're not a child, they're a young person, and they want to be considered they want to be involved in deciding what's important and what the priorities are going to be and how to get to reaching their goals. The other thing is, I don't think I've met any young person who has been a young mum who doesn't want to be a good mum. This is a strong desire that young people also have. So let's put aside any assumptions when a young person comes to us. Let's keep ourselves open to them as an individual. They come with their own ideas, their own values, their own belief systems, their own experiences. Let's keep ourselves open to understanding what that is. Let's inquire about that. They might want to stay at home with their baby before re-engaging with services, or they might have a desire to connect with education. It's good to keep our minds open to that and check with the young person around where they may be at different points in time. They also have a strong desire for the end of stigma. And decreased public scrutiny. How often each year do we have stories on, national TV about dole-bludging young mothers out there, trying to rort, the Centrelink system, and this is an incredibly powerful message that is heard not just by young parents or young people, but by the broader community. And in some ways, it often has resulted in people thinking that it's okay to be a little bit disrespectful or dismissive of a young person. And not everyone's like that, but some people may be like that. And that it's kind of okay, it's a little bit open slather, you can kind of, their feelings don't matter because really, they're a dole bludger. So they want to be respected for the job they're doing, and often in very difficult circumstances. I guess this slide's kind of reflecting what the experience is like for many young women when they first find out that they're pregnant. They might feel like they're drowning. completely emotionally overwhelmed. They might react by being very confused and certainly confused about what the options may be. They might have a very deep anxiety. They might be very uncertain about the kind of decisions they need to start to make and how to make those decisions. And usually there's a great fear usually in telling someone about the pregnancy as well. And these factors often contribute to things like the prolonged delays that we have with some young people in telling someone that they're pregnant. They could, have been living with that for quite a number of weeks, and then sort of leading to increased risks in pregnancy, because they're kind of disclosing quite late in the day, and so some of the options for consideration are a little bit more complicated, certainly around terminations, etc. And the kind of pressure, the pressing time, the sense of pressing time that health practitioners can feel in relation to what they understand the young person is going to have to kind of contemplate and deal with, and in turn that young person being overwhelmed with the kind of decisions that they're being asked to kind of consider at every point of contact. So if you just want to have a look at these are some of the common challenges experienced by pregnant and parenting young people, and they're probably not a surprise for many in the room. So those kind of common challenges, they're very powerful challenges, and they often exacerbate already high levels of physical and emotional isolation, given that we're more likely to have vulnerable, marginalised young teenagers becoming pregnant and or following through with an unintended pregnancy. And also can contribute, these challenges can continue to contribute to increased risk of depression as well. One thing that, it's hard to find sympathetic help quite often when you're trying to navigate healthcare. Everyone's really busy. Even as adults, we might need some help to find our way from point A to B. People might just give us a number and assume that we've got the skills and the capacity, emotional capacity, to deal with that and follow through appropriately. And if it's offered in that way, also with a lack of kind of an empathetic or sympathetic approach, then it's all the more difficult to kind of take on board. This is particularly important for young people, that there is some kind of sympathetic, positive response to them as they present at any point in their journey. As you can see, accessing a whole range of healthcare, childcare, housing, all these kinds of issues and decisions might be kind of, exploding all around them, that they're having to deal with at the same time as dealing with the realities of being pregnant or having a child. These are particular subpopulations of young people that I think are important that we're extra careful with, because they may face specific challenges. Young people with disabilities who are presenting to your practices pregnant or with children, particularly if there's an intellectual disability, that they're going to need intensive community-based support, positive support around them, and that needs to be kind of considered in your plan about how you identify and link them to that. Culturally and linguistically diverse young people, language barriers, we know that, issues relating to their family and country of origin. You don't know, you need to ask, what are the issues for them, what are the issues for their family, how might you be able to support them around any of those issues? Is there anyone else supporting them around those issues? Refugee young people and newly arrived, refugee young people. They and their families may have significant dislocation, but also quite likely with a very strong history of trauma and possibly torture. And we know that refugee families have extremely high stress rate, stress levels already, let alone, the additional challenges of having a teenager pregnant. As I said, Indigenous young people, but Amanda can talk a little bit more about that, and young people in transitional care. So young people who might have had a history as children with the child protection systems and now, are leaving perhaps care systems and are still vulnerable, may not have ongoing good mentoring and other support systems to assist them at that time, and so a little bit more vulnerable at that time. Young parents whose babies die in utero or soon after birth, really important group that we just really try to stay as connected with as possible, especially if there's been a sort of a pre-existing a substance use issue and the likelihood of relapse that can happen. And again, trauma backgrounds, and of course young fathers, which I know I haven't talked a lot about so far. So young parent is also still a young person. They still have a strong need for social connectedness. They still have a lot of growing up to do. They're not going, just because they're suddenly a young parent or pregnant doesn't mean that they still don't have those developmental milestones to continue to develop through. They often feel they need permission for support. Sorry, I'm going a little bit too over our time. They may be torn with responsibilities. And they may not know how to kind of negotiate effectively with others around their need to be young and do things they need to and feel connected, but also care for their babies. And so that's something that we can also help them with. There's a lot here that we're probably not going to be able to get through today. But so these are some things that I think I'd like you to kind of think about as take-home messages. A collaborative approach needs more than one of us to make a difference and support a young person. We need to work alongside our peers and our services. Having a proactive approach, not just a responsive approach. Setting a time for your young patients to do a little bit of planning and thinking before you see them, and or chasing things up a little bit more than perhaps you might do normally with your adult patients. Involving consulting with a young person. Building rapport and trust, that's critical. If you did nothing but spend time getting to know the young person, make them feel welcome, provide a friendly approach for your first session. If you did nothing more than that, you're creating the foundation then for other areas of work to support them. So in your notes, there'll be a table that's been pulled out of one of the resources in the GP kit, and it particularly talks about the developmental stages of adolescence and, kind of determining how much of a concrete thinker the young person is, or, how well developed is their reasoning state, and how you might therefore engage and discuss things with them, the level of information you might provide for them, etc. So these are some things that I think are really critical for all our young people and also for pregnant young people. Discussing confidentiality with them. Having some time in the session where you see them alone. Thinking about that as a practice issue. How do you approach your young patients in your practices? Have you got some ideas about how you do that? Or do you just automatically see them all, regardless of how old they are, with parents or others? Be non-judgmental. Think about your verbal and non-verbal cues. Think about what the experience is like for a young person from the point they open the door and walk up to the front desk. Be yourself. Young people don't expect us to be kind of cool young people. I mean, they'll laugh at us. They don't want that from us. They just want us to be sympathetic and open, not judgmental. So I think I'm going to now forward you to Amanda, and you'll notice that there's a lot more in the slides around how to have conversations around confidentiality with young people and some guides around that, and linkages, as I said, to key documents for you.
I'm going to be so quick, guys, truly. Like, it's going to be a minute. It's going to be like a PowerPoint power session. Let's go. All right. And I'm going to my part. Wow. Cool, here I am, that's me, Amanda, the Clinical Nurse Specialist for Youth Health. So I was going to talk very quickly about a case study of a client of mine who was a 17-year-old who was referred by an NGO called Youth Off the Streets, if anyone's familiar with that NGO, for pregnancy testing because she wasn't sure if she was pregnant or not. And I went and saw her in outreach, which I know Voula touched on very quickly, as one of the services we provide that, we are centre-based, but that we will go to where the young person is comfortable to give them that sense of control and power in their own space. And she did return a positive beta-HCG for pregnancy. So I had to do the whole lot. We did the pregnancy options counselling, which all our nurses in youth health are specifically trained to provide. And then she was provided a collaborative team within youth health to care for her. So myself, I supported this young person, and I supported her around booking into the hospital, accessing a GP for antenatal pathology, because I can't do that. Support around youth health specific issues that affect her pregnancy, like attending school. She was doing a HSC when she found out she was pregnant, and wanting her to finish and engage with school so that it was safe, and gave her options for the future. And I supported her around transition to parenting. I did a home assessment of the home environment antenatally, and we referred her to things like Centrelink for parenting payments and other NGOs. Our MO helped her out, our medical officer, did a lot of antenatal pathology and ultrasound referrals for her, monitoring around specific issues like substance use, and we gave her some contraception after the fact, which is always good, so we don't have another unplanned pregnancy. And she also saw one of our youth health counsellors to provide psychosocial support, like Voula was talking about. So this one-stop shop, this one place that did all these things in a collaborative approach was what met this client's needs the most. As a footnote, she's actually represented now with a new unplanned pregnancy. But isn't that great? Because she came back. So she obviously had a good experience. And we're going to continue to provide all this support again, untimed, unlimited sessions. That's nice, isn't it? So the outcome for Shiley before all this happened was that she went to TAFE. She went to TAFE and did a Certificate 3 in Community Services, and she's now got gainful employment. So that's helpful in supporting her and her babies. Her family and partner were engaged around her needs because she was really nervous, like Voula was talking about approaching an adult to say, I'm pregnant and, I wasn't meant to be. She felt supported and empowered to care for herself in the way that she wanted during her antenatal and postnatal, care. And facts and involvement was really limited for her, and I think that's always a good outcome when we can avoid that. So what can we learn, right? So establishment of a supportive and trusting relationship with her was key, absolutely key, and that's evident because she's come back in and re-engaged with our service now for a second model of care. I totally followed her agenda. So now, when I say the client's agenda, I don't mean I say, oh, look, an MMR booster's really handy in pregnancy for all these reasons. She goes, nah. And I say, okay, that's cool, don't have to have it. That's not what I mean. What I mean is we come back around to that while we just take her lead on what she needs to address right now. On things that sometimes are a bit hairy, like how do I breastfeed with nipple piercings? It's always a fun one. I maintained her confidentiality, but at the same time making sure I was always open and honest about my obligations as a mandatory reporter. We're all mandatory reporters, right? So I had to be open and upfront about how I had to engage community services if I had to, and I always let her know what I was doing. So while I was maintaining my obligation, I was keeping her trust and confidentiality and rapport, all of that stuff that I worked hard to build. And I used empathic and non-judgmental responses in my language, right? So this is my little take-home message. If I can give you one thing today, Everyone's heard that, proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So it takes a village to care for a young person. We all can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. We just can't. We have to work together. A lot of young people don't have a village already, like Voula was talking about. A lot of young people don't have that already. So in the absence of a village, well, if there is a village, we have to involve the villagers. We have to mobilise the people to help this young person. In the absence of a village, we have to build that village from the ground up, brick by brick. And we do that together, right? So practice points for you guys. There's some great training to build those bricks, all the building, to build your practice. The Essential Youth Health Skills Training is one I can recommend, guys. It's amazing. It's provided through South West Sydney Local Health District through our service, and I help provide that training, so I think it's awesome. Heads assessment training. I know there was a few hands about, oh yeah, I do heads assessment. So if anyone feels they want to be upskilled in heads assessment, I'm skilled in heads assessment. It is a really important model of care. Build partnerships brick by brick, okay? With me. Guys, I want to come to your practices. I want to help you. I want to resource your centres. I want to use your resources to help me. Let's all work together and build partnerships to build the bricks of this village for this young person. And build youth-friendly practice. Now, I'll give you 2 examples, and then I swear I'm being quiet. 2 examples. A good one might be doing this particular youth-friendly practice review self-assessment you guys can do. It's an appendix of the Adolescent Health GP Resource Kit. If anybody would like help to do a youth-friendliness practice review of their general practice, I put my hand up right now. Let's book it in. I've got my diary if anybody wants to come see me in the afternoon tea break. I'm more than happy to help, and Youth Health in general is more than happy to help. And the other thing is just identifying your service as youth-friendly, with like a youth-friendly flyer with youth-friendly language and graphics, or having a sign in your waiting room that says, we are a youth-friendly practice. Or, and I love this one, is engaging your reception staff and practice nurses. Does everyone here have a practice nurse in their practice? I want to see hands from everybody. Yeah, totally, right? Because you guys love nurses, don't you? Of course. So, engage your practice nurse. She can come out to reception and greet your identified at-risk person and do a mini psychosocial assessment while you're finishing with your regular patients. And that's welcoming and comforting for that young person. Please come and see me in the afternoon tea break. I have cards, I have my diary. I would love to come and see every single one of you to make sure that we can support and build that village for all our young people. Peace.